All right, ready to start? We start? Fine. Thank you for everyone coming. This topic for this week, we're going to be talking about Gvinas Israel. So Gvinas Sakum, as it comes up as well. Just the introduction. For those that do know me or don't know me, I do work for the OK, and this is kind of a bit of part of my industry. So the plan here is we'll go into the halachas of Gvinas Sakum, Gvinas Israel, and then we'll go a little bit more practical about how things are done in the industry, and we'll take it from there. So now the way these pages are organized, they're organized a little off order. So we're actually going to start from the end. So from the back here, the last two pages is the tour. We're going to start with the tour, and then we're going to flip over to the front, which is going to be the Shulchan Aruch. So anyways, looking inside, we're going to start in the tour. See the page here, it has on top Simon Kuf Tesvav. We've got 3 lines from the bottom of the tour. There's a little hay in brackets over there, and that's where it's going to be started talking about the cheese. So Kuf Tesvav talks about milchiks in general. So it starts off with cholov yisrael, cholov akum, goes into cheese, then goes into butter. So we're just gonna focus today on the cheese. Gvinas Yisrael generally is kind of considered the silent brother of cholov yisrael. Cholov yisrael gets the fame from Moshe's tshuva and all the cholov stam, cholov yisrael, that whole industry. Whereas the Gvinas Yisrael kind of is the silent brother, doesn't really get much of a mention. Everyone just goes to the store and they buy cheese. They see Hechshon and they buy cheese. That's about it. So we're basically going to focus here on is what's behind the packet of cheese. So anyways, starting from 3 lines from the bottom of the tour. So he goes, the tour says, Gvinas hanochrim asuros. So cheese that comes from a goy, it's forbidden. The Gemara will explain a few reasons why it goes on. Why? Because the cheese will be coagulated, the cheese will be formed with rennet that is from the skin of the inside stomach of a non-shechted cow. So, how is cheese made? Let's start from there. Cheese is made is where you take milk and you have to put something into it to coagulate it, to harden. So, the main ingredient that's put in there is rennet. And then additionally, they can put in cultures, they can put in acids. What is it? Huh? Rennet. I'm going to get there. Don't worry, I'll get there. Rennet. What is rennet? Rennet. It's called. It's close. I got your ears perked. So close. Rennet, R-E-N-E-T, is, double N-E-T. Anyways, rennet is basically a group of enzymes. That what they do is, getting there. Bacteria. What are they? Enzyme, whatever. Basically, it's a group of enzymes that what they do is that they make the cheese. With the milk, when you put it in, they start forming the cheese. It comes together and it forms into cheese. Boina, exactly. On Shabbos, it's a malach of boina. Exactly. Shabbos malach of boina. Milk base is already called Yisrael, or does it not have? We'll get in there. We'll get there. So now, the cheese is formed by putting in. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. Okay. So the rennet. So the rennet is what actually forms the cheese within the milk. So you put rennet in, and usually done at cold. I wouldn't say cold, but usually done at warm temperatures. It's usually done at warm temperatures. And these warm temperatures, it would basically, the cheese would then form so what you'll end up having is your curds and whey. Everyone knows the nursery rhyme of old Miss Muppet, sat on a tuppet, yeah, eating curds and whey. That's basically what it is. You'll have curds and you have whey. So you have, which is called the gavina, it's called the made gavina, the water that comes from that. Now, additionally to rennet, they'll add in other things as well. They'll add in cultures, they'll add in other bacteria, they'll add in acids, they'll add in vinegar. So cheese, I've seen plenty of cheeses that are just made with vinegar and rennet itself. Those all you need just a basic acid, just again to help with that coagulation. So that's the basic rundown of how cheese is made. So now let's go. You put in some vinegar first, or you either put in vinegar first, or you can put in some cultures first, depending on the type of cheese. Every cheese is in different cultures. For example, in the Swiss cheese, when you want to make they'll put in certain molds that will actually make the holes, the eyes, they call them. So depending on what cheese it is, you're going to put some in. Some of them are kind of related. For example, mozzarella and provolone are somewhat related. So there are a lot of very similar cultures they're putting over there, and so forth. And depending on what the type of cheese is. Now, so that's the basis of making cheese. Rennet can be, so the question is where these enzymes come from. Where do we get rennet from? So there's many different ways of where rennet can come from, the source of rennet. So one way, which is not so commonly used, was used a lot back in the day, not so commonly used, but is still used, is where you can get what's referred to as animal rennet. So within the stomach of a calf, the fourth stomach to be accurate, the abomasum. That's where within there is where the rennet, where the enzymes are located. And you can take that and you can put that in the milk and it will turn into cheese, right? So that's a calf stomach. What's that? Right, it's similar, yeah, it kind of breaks it down there. So it's not considered kosher. So when it comes to basar v'cholov, so making it, so if you want to make kosher cheese that way, you would have to use, first of all, the animal have to be shepherded. And then the way it's done is, so I'll get back. Europe, a lot of laws in Europe, according to the European Union, is you have to basically have a lot of legacy laws where, for example, Parmesan cheese can only be made in a certain area in Italy, and it has to be made with the same recipe that was used for thousands of years. That recipe includes animal rennet. So how that rennet is made is that you'll have stomachs from calves that have been shefted, and they will go through some kind of acid wash or whatever it is, and they'll basically get the liquid from that, and they'll use a liquid. They'll basically strip the enzymes off the calf stomach, and they'll put the liquid in there. Now, when it comes from, first of all, the amount that's putting is very, very minimal. So it's definitely important b'shishim in that regard. So that's why it's not really considered basar v'cholov, but it's a dover mayim. But when it comes to basar v'cholov, because it's all heter, so that's fine there. But when it comes to, the difference is when I use a non-kosher animal and I'm putting in, even though it's basar b'shishim, as we said, it's considered dover mayim. Dover mayim is something that basically causes it to coagulate. So basically, is that it's not really bottled, it's not hidden because I can see a reaction to it. That's why when it comes to non-kosher cheese, cheese, but also the non-kosher calf stomach, when I put that in, that all of a sudden I see, even though it's less than shishim, but I still see form from it. So therefore I can't taste bottle because you see a reaction from it. No. It's basically the Shulchan Aruch says if you can taste the time of the meat inside, then it's a problem. But you put very little in, put less than shishim, the time, the flavor shouldn't be there. If it's less than shishim, you're not going to get flavor. But you'll have a dover mayim, but it's basar v'cholov, you're not concerned about dover mayim. Yeah, so it's just for the basar v'cholov. No. No. That's a different story. Because here we're not. There's no taste of the rennet inside. So there's no flavor that's being bottled. It's just a reaction, exactly. You're looking for the reaction. You're not looking for a flavor here. There's no actual flavor. In theory, you could even, if the reaction is done and it's still there, you can also take it out. But you know, in theory. Anyways, when you buy the pack and you look and you're about to eat that pizza, just 2 seconds, think about what goes through it. If you want to get really into it, think about the box that comes in, what they put in to make the box, what they put in to make the labels. A lot goes into everything. Anyways, so one way to make Renin is by using the calf stomach. So which is referred to as animal Renin. That's one way of making Renin. Another way of making Renin is called vegetable Renin, where they can make certain plants that have those enzymes in. We can also, again, those plants, that vegetation can actually also create the same reaction. That's another way. The third way, which is the most common nowadays, is called microbial Renin, where they will isolate the enzymes within plants or whatever it is. They'll isolate the enzymes, and then they'll basically just grow it in labs. That's the most common one which is used nowadays. So obviously, halakhically, that makes things a lot more simpler. However, animal Renin is still used, like I said. So for example, real Parmesan has to be made in Italy in an area, in a certain particular area in Italy, and it has to be done with the same recipe, and it has to be used animal Renin. So animal Renin is still used, but just not as widely used to be used back in the day. You could make it here in Connecticut. According to the European Union, it's not considered Parmesan. I mean, in America, we slap Parmesan and everything. We don't care. It tastes like it, looks like it, smells like it, done. It's Parmesan. So, but according to the European Union, it smells like it. It's Parmesan. So, but according to the European Union, it's not Parmesan. Anyways, so. That's a good business idea. So let's go back to the Torah. So gvinas hanachim, as we say, gvinas hanachim asurit, and there's a few reasons that are brought down. Why? So because they put in it, because if you buy from a guy, they could use to coagulate the milk. They could use animal rennet from a non-shechted animal calf. Nevela. Or now another reason the Gemara gives, it says is because also they will coat it with pig fat, so that's another reason why you can't buy it off him. And sometimes they'll also mix in non-kosher milk. And so the two goes on to explain, but even though we know that milk that comes from a tummy animal cannot turn into cheese, so it is. So I've obviously never tried it myself, but I did a little research on the internet to figure this out. There's someone who's selling cheese from pig milk in Holland at something ridiculous like 40,000 euros per pound. The reason is because it's extremely difficult, to milk pigs, and extremely difficult to make the cheese from it. So the reality is it's not something definitely practical. I'm sure there's plenty of people in I'm sure a couple of documents that want to do that. But anyways, so the reason is it goes on to explain. Even though, turning over to the next page, it cannot turn into cheese. So there's no chash really that they should bring in non-kosher milk. So we say we're afraid that they might add something. There might be a little strip of shirayim that's in there, right? So between the holes of the cheese, they might have a little bit of milk, which will stuck around there. Now, Kosovo Rambam. The Rambam writes, even if there's no chash for any of what's said, so we know that instead of right, exactly, that we know that instead of using animal rennet, they use vegetable rennet. The aim of chalav tama, we know for sure that there's no chalav tama, there's no non-kosher milk in there. So the Geonim taught that this is also because there's already a gzeira on cheese, regardless of how.
They didn't want to make stuff.
Exactly. You don't want to make it.
You don't know which one is which.
Exactly. You just make a blanket statement. They made a gzeira. Any cheese that comes from a guy is a problem. All right, there's punishment to that, so don't bother. Now, let's flip back to the previous page. What we're going to do is we're just going to go into the Beis Yosef, which is on the left column. Beis Yosef, Okay, the last page, the tour. Let's go back to that.
Make some big.
No. The last. Take your thing of the last page. Promise the last page.
Okay.
Yeah, the last page. You're going to see on top it says Beis Yud.
Yeah.
So the left column, Beis Yosef. And here's Gvinas Hanachri.
Okay.
Good. The Gvinas Hanachri. So just a little Hakdama for the Beis Yosef. So generally, it's always good to, whenever you learn a topic, is to go from the Gemaras and the Rishonim and move through. But Baruch Hashem for the Beis Yosef is a shtickle cheat sheet. And the Beis Yosef back in his day was referred to as the art scholar of his day. It was because the art scholar of his day. Basically, the Beis Yosef made things a lot simpler. Instead of everyone having to open the Gemaras and the poskim and everything to know what's going on, so the Beis Yosef kind of brought everything together. He summarized it, brought everything together. Obviously, like everything back in the day, not everyone was a big fan of that. But now it's kind of commonplace that we all went to the Beis Yosef. So he's done us a favor. Instead of having to go through all the Gemaras before, he's got everything summarized here. So let's look at the Beis Yosef. He's going to bring us a bit of the. We're going to learn some of the Beis Yosef because it's quite long, but will give us the idea of the Gemaras behind it. Now, Gvinas Hanachrim, so everyone got the first page that we learned. So we're going to go back a page, and on the Beis Yosef, which is the left column, and the paragraph starts Gvinas. So Gvinas Hanachrim Asuros. The Gemara explains a few reasons. The Perkei Mamidim, which is in Avodah Zarah. So Amrinim Shigozo Gvinas Hanachrim. So in Perek Mamidim we say there's a gzera that you're not allowed to have Gvinas Nachrim. Ubainan, my timer goes ubom. So the Gemara then later on asks what's the reason for this? V'yov Mishum ben Levi timer, Mishum Giloi. So Mishum ben Levi gives the reason, says it's because of Giloi. What is Giloi? Giloi is that any liquid that I have which is left out open and was never supervised. So back in the day where there's a lot of snakes that were around, we were afraid that the snake would come and put some venom inside. So now, which we're going to learn, it's health-wise. Now, reality is, Shulchan the next simon in Kuf Zayin already says that's not a problem anymore. But back then, there was a problem, and that's the Gzeira because Goyim at the time weren't makpid on this, and they used to leave things open, and so therefore we don't take anything from Goy because it's all left open. That's a sakon. Say that what? Okay. Right. All right, but yeah, but I'm saying Allah Lamaisa we don't follow. We are still concerned. Okay. Oh, okay, but I'm saying well, the Ekad again, there's no problem. I mean, there's no problem. It's only fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Fine. So that's the first. So he gives the first reason because of Gilul. As we said, you can't have it where there's no bits of milk left around and there could be cholov tomei. Sorry.
You said Gilu. Now you continue to read. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Rabbi Chanina gives his reason. You can't have milk without bits of milk together, and that some bits of milk could be cholov tomei. Right, as we said, that's what we said before.
That's why the example.
Exactly.
Because usually the between are possible, we might have a little milk.
Right, exactly. So you say you could have a little milk. Right, yeah. So that's more kashrus now. And now we're going into kashrus more. The Shmuel Alman, right? Yeah. But he gives a little background. The Shmuel Alman, like we learned that they could use animal rennet. Like we learned that they could use. They use pig fat to smear around. Because they can also use vinegar. Now we're concerned obviously with wine vinegar. That's good wine, yeah, and that's what we're concerned over there. They could use sap from orlo. And so therefore that's a problem there. If you're using orlo, that's also a problem, related. Sap that comes from maple tree, like syrup that comes from tree. Yeah. Fine. The Ikshur of Nachman of Chisda, the Imkin Disasa Bahano, Vaskin and Bakusha. So then, but the Gemara then asks Rav Nachman of Chisda Luchura, then it should be also Bahano on these two things. The Zayin Nesach and Arla also Bahano, so why is that cheese also Bahano? And then left it with a kasha. And so therefore, that's why the Torah did not bring those opinions. Because even though the opinions in the Gemara, but they were left off with a question and they weren't answered, so therefore the Torah didn't bring that down la halacha. The gam like yeah, sorry, that's right. The gam like Kosatama Shel Shubin Levi. Why? We just Giloi. Mishon Danon Lacheshin Legiloi, because nowadays we're not cautious for Giloi. Moshe's buyer. Turn the next page. The Simon Sha'achazeh. Beises is now on the right hand side, right? Now, but down. Shekosra Tesed V'Shem Rabbeinu Tam. He actually Matinu Tam Poshel Esek Gvinas and Nochim. The Tesed bring down Rabbeinu Tam.
That's why a lot of you can just eat Kolovakum. They don't care.
All of and Gvina two separate halachos. We'll get into that, right? So now Rabbeinu Tam writes, he actually Matinu Tam Poshel Esek Gvinas Nochim. We don't find a reason to make cheese a problem. The hot Tama Issa Mishum Nikra, because the Tama Issa, which is Nikra, which is Gila. Nikra actually means biting. So it's Gila is referred to as sometimes Nikra, right? Shubin Levi, right? Because it's snake bite, so to speak. So Rabbi Shubin Levi, the Kaiman Kavose that we follow Rabbi Shubin Levi, after Lagabi Rabbi Yochanan, but Lake Lamecha is so we basically he follows Rabbi Shubin Levi that says the problem is because of Giloi, and now that we're not cautious for Giloi, then there shouldn't be a problem. That's Rabbi. Because there's no snakes around. So there's no snakes. So because there's no.
I've seen venomous.
Venomous, yeah. I'm saying this, yeah. You're not going. It depends where, but I'm saying, yeah. Go back where the Yidden were living. There was not chash anymore. In Europe, at least. I'm saying, no, there's no chash at least for that. The main thing is the chash of anything left over. Snakes coming in. There's no chash really. Now,
are they like that thing where now they have stainless steel fabs and enclosed environments with steel plate? Like how much do you take a lot to say it's not applicable? Wow.
the whole Gilui was basically negated way back then. It was basically more like
it can happen today, but it's very rare.
It's very rare. It's rare that maybe
it's not so common like it used to be there.
Yeah, maybe in certain parts in Australia, if you make cheese there and you've got snakes, snakes and spiders going around.
Backyard.
Yeah, exactly. Don't make it in your backyard in Australia, but other places now it's not really so common. Anyway, so just to finish off the tour, we're almost going to finish off here. He goes, we don't have to worry about them adding in chol of tomei. We're not that stupid that they're going to put in milk that's not going to coagulate because chol of tomei doesn't really make any difference. No point from putting in there, right? If I want to say the milk itself, I don't want to add in other milk, so maybe fine that there's some gain it can mix together, right? But here I'm adding in milk and doesn't even coagulate. What's the point? He said there's really no point in that. Hey, look, right? So therefore, since we don't have snakes around, and also mishum giloi. And also there's some places that will eat it. Why? Because the animal rennet is not, they don't use animal rennet, and they just use vegetable rennet. So vegetable rennet is not a problem. So there shouldn't be a problem at all. That's the Renin time. And yes, and just to add the gam going and Narbonne hitir oisim the mukayma. So in Narbonne, which is in France, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, so basically, again, they use rennet instead of rennet coming from an animal. They use rennet coming from grass, flowers, and that kind of thing. So natural ones, right? So there's certain areas. So in Narbonne, they made their cheese there. In some France, I believe it is, where they made it only with vegetable rennet. So the farming back then said, listen, because they only use vegetable rennet, it's not going to be a problem.
So that region is vegetable
rennet. Exactly, rennet. So from cheese from that region, you don't have a chash.
Because they're yakkas, they don't mix.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, they're not going to mix. Okay, Adkan, that is the tour. Let's flip now to the beginning of this booklet, which is now the Shulchan Aruch. So now, what are we passing in halacha? So we know we've had the tour. The tour's brought a few reasons. The Beis Yosef brings down the Gemara with a few different reasons. What are we passing in halacha? So in Steve Beis, he says over here, the reason, so again, why do we ask the grino? Why do we ask the cheese? Because they use animal rennet. That's it. That is the halacha what we pass. Shehi nevelo and it's nevelo. Now, even if they were used vegetable rennet, it's still also. It doesn't matter. Blanket rule. It's a gzeira. That's the halacha we paskin. We're not allowed to get cheese from a goy because because they generally use animal rennet. Even if we know they haven't used animal rennet, we don't get cheese from a goy. Now going to continue on to the Ramah, the Haggah says, "V'chein haminig ve'en lifritz get," and this is the minig, and we shouldn't break this minig. Im loy b'makom shenago b'hem heter mikadmoin. If it's not in a place where they did heter before. Now, interesting, the Lashon here uses minig. Doesn't use gzeira, doesn't use halacha. It's a minig because at the end of the day, as we saw with the Chachmei Narbon, that over there they had their minig was that they didn't follow this gzeira. So the minig now is to accept the gzeira. Everyone's all accepting gzeira. We shouldn't break it unless there was places like Narbon that had a minig from years and years ago. So now, obviously, there's no place really that has that minig. I mean, yes, the reality is the majority of places in the United States do not use microbial rennet, but regardless, the minig is it's not an ancient minig like the Chachmei Narbon they had. We don't have that minig anymore. So now there are more. So now so right until now we basically covered the reason why gvinas akum is an issue. Now we're going to go into kind of a new subject. We're going to go in. How does someone make gvinas akum, gvinas yisrael? So how do you? So what is required to take that cheese? So if you go into a grocery company, so when a mashgiach goes to, they make. So how is cheese done nowadays? How do you machshir? Exactly. Practical.
How do you do your job?
It's getting there. I don't do my job. I look at other people do their job. So okay. So same thing. So what do I have to? So what's required? So nowadays, how does kosher agencies make cheese? Usually, right? Or not the kosher companies. How do the kosher companies make cheese? Your ha'olams and your natural and kosher and all these. How do they make cheese? So usually, what they'll go to a cheese company, and they'll have a cheese company make cheese for them. Now, in the United States, anyone knows, Wisconsin is the capital of cheeses. You'll basically drive a mile, you'll bump into a cheese factory. Every little house is converted into a cheese factory. There's so many cheese factories. And everyone, how they survive, I don't know. I always ask them, how do you guys survive? Oh, we do this specialty, they do that specialty. Everyone has their reason what they do. This one exports, this one imports, they figure it out. So reality is that all of Wisconsin is, now they make it all over the United States. You have cheese factories, but Wisconsin is the main state that's done there. What do? So a kosher company will go into a cheese factory and say, listen, I want you doing your kosher production. So the mashgiach is there for the kosher agency, they'll send the mashgiach in there. Now, if it's a Chalav Yisrael kosher cheese, so therefore they will also supervise the milking that's done before. So the milk will come in as Chalav Yisrael, and then we'll go into make cheese as well. And you have to buy the cheese. If it's a Chalav Stam cheese, now again, the cheese making always needs hashgacha because of the above of what we said. And kosher, and we have two rules here. We have there's Chalav Yisrael and there's Gvinas Yisrael. So even though the follower of Moshe and say that you can use as Rav Moshe refers to a Chalav companies, so still when it comes to the cheese, you still need a mashgiach by the cheese. Oh, okay. So generally what will happen is so Chalav Yisrael, the milk is coming in. They'll have mashgiachim by the farm. The milk will then come in usually by tanker. They'll hook it up. They'll put it into a big silo to wait, and then it'll be fed in. Well, first of all, everything has to be pasteurized in the United States. I mean, legally you got to pasteurize it. I think it's 161 degrees Fahrenheit. So now, so if it's a Chalav Yisrael run, he has to pasteurize it, which basically is you run hot water through the pasteurizer you'll get it at 212. You get at boiling point, you run hot water through that, and that's kosher in the pasteurizer. If it's not Chalav Yisrael, and it's just a Chalav Stam, and the milk just came in there, and there's no hashgacha by the actual milk, it doesn't really matter because, whatever, the pasteurizers only use milk, it just uses milk, so fine, so regular milk. So but by both Chalav Yisrael and Chalav Stam, when it comes to cheese making, there you have the mashgiach. So what does the mashgiach actually have to do? And this is where we're going to go into the Shulchan Aruch, right? So now let's look at the last line in the Ramah over here where you got the big chof. So we're going to look over there. So you go on the last line over here on the first page of the Shulchan Aruch, and you have there's the chof.
Okay.
And next to that it goes now. The im hayisrael if the yid sees the cheese being made. Now, what does it mean for the cheese being made? Rennet makes the cheese. So if a Jew sees the guy put the rennet in, then, next page. So, Ba'chalebo, he sees the milking and the, sorry. After the place, okay, it comes from there. There you go. He can stomach his minute. He can have what these cheeses. Anyway, so if the cheese, he sees like gvinas v'chalebo, if he sees making all the cheese and the milking,
You have to have the milk for the cheese.
for what? Yeah, right.
You said that the follow is not selling.
No, but you still well, like b'chol b'sol, you have to wash the cheese, you have to wash the milking, and you have to wash the making the cheese. So there's two things. You want to make sure it's b'chol b'sol. You have to.
The follow is not minded.
Right. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. So therefore, it's mutter, right? And he quotes here. You see in brackets, agudo per kasher.
It's represent Mashgiach has to see the rennet.
Yeah.
But how do you also have to see the source of the rennet?
Right. So he'll see the rennet. I mean, the rennet nowadays is liquid rennet. They'll have these big jugs. They'll have the label on it, whatever it is. Now, there's a few things can be done. Sometimes they'll just measure out and then they'll just pour it in. Sometimes they'll actually have a computer system. So there'll be a little rennet tank. You'll see them pour it. They'll pour it in, and then the Mashiach, in theory, just has to watch them go through. Right? Watch the rennet go through. Now, right? And so now, this is the minig which is possible that's all that has to be done. Now this is what Mendy were talking about. But what happened if he saw the cheese being made, but he didn't see the milking? But because we know that Tomei different milk cannot become cheese, so yesh lahati b'di'evet. It can be matter b'di'evet. He ain't l'chushem eiro b'davar Tomei. Me'acha shal segvinis minacholam. He davar Tomei ain't no. So we're not concerned that they're actually going to add in milk. Tomei milk, because we know the Tomei milk can't become cheese. So if you didn't see the milking done, but you did see the cheese, so b'di'evet, there are more rights. You are allowed to have the cheese, right? B'di'evet.
So how do people do it? Based on our emotions?
It's a Ramesha certain. So and you obviously because he's there, he wants to make cheese. So he's not going to add in non-kosher milk if he wants to make cheese. He ends up also. So now let's say you had some leftover milk. I can't then go drink that milk because that milk now is also it's hollow. But if I saw that he'd taken some of that milk and he made cheese with it, so then fine. With the evid, I can say it's kosher. But obviously, you shouldn't do this. But still, that milk still has a xero kolovakum, so I can't have that milk, right?
I just don't understand one thing.
Right.
The process of making the cheese.
Yeah, use milk.
But you said milk is not standing.
Full of tomei, pig milk, horse milk, camel milk. Sorry, full of tomei, full of toy. So
Why would a goy that's already making cheese with milk? Why would he add a full of tomei?
that's what the Ramos says.
It doesn't stand. Even if it would stand, it still wouldn't work. Why would he go get a different milk when he has a kosher milk?
It could be cheaper. What do you mean? If it worked, you get horse milk, you put a little bit of cow milk, the horse milk, but not.
You needed
Whatever it
100
is.
gallons, get 99. I needed to just throw it off. I'm throwing 1 gallon.
You want to talk about industries where they play around. In the United States, you're not going to really have that issue. You're not going to have that issue, which is obviously a Moshe sector. There are countries now where they will play around with the milk that comes in. And no, Australia for sure. Australia not.
Third world countries.
So the recent country that I was discussing was Colombia, where Colombia, what they'll play around with is basically the truckers. So the truckers go to the farm, they pick up milk. And then they come to the place with a full tanker. What will the trucker do? He makes a cheshbon with the farm. And he says, listen, I'm not going to pick up full milk. Add a bit of water in. And they'll add water, and then they'll come in. He got a full tank, and he's got water in there. And the problem is that only when they start making cheese, they realize their cheese is not really working out well, then they have that issue. So whatever, that's a problem with amongst the truckers they have in Colombia. Is it widespread? That was one of it's not so widespread. You have a few rotten apples, but it has, Mashgiach told me that it's been companies have fought a few guys that have had that issue. Now, so there the problem is not Chalav Tomei, the problem is water. I mean, it's just that it was. So it's like kashrus, so what's the problem? Okay, Exactly. So us them going to go start milking camels or pigs or horses and do that. Like they can't. I just want to quick. So how the company picked it up is that the guy went to all the farms and he skipped the farm, and they knew that. And the farm called the company and said, "Oh, he hasn't come." And then the guy shows up with a truck full of milk. He's like, "Hey, I got all my milk here." They knew that he played games. So anyway, so you see that you can still have people that play shtick. Shtick's still out there. Anyways, so we are limited on time, so I'm not going to go. We'll go instead of going through the shach inside, I'll just discuss the shach outside. The shach. So as we see here over here, is that the Ramah says that what does the yid need to do to make a cheese? He has to look at the rennet being put in. So the guy, he sees the guy put the rennet in the cheese, then you're fine. And he brings it up, and he, which I actually forgot to read the documentation, so it's fine. So the Makarov is the documentation, which is the Ramah's spiritual matur. So in the documentation, he brings a Mordechai, which a Mordechai says that the yid has to make the cheese, but he brings the Agudam, and the Agudam, I'm just going to look, so I don't want to misquote this, but the Aguda says that, if I can find it, so the Aguda basically says is that on Shabbos, so I'm going to read it out loud. Hitu Agudaylin, Adam Kene, Esek Vinay, so Schum Acher, Vanochim Metakim B'Shabbos. You saw Roya V'Shemel V'Eina Medaber. So basically, the whole mocker is that Aguda says is that a yid is not allowed to make cheese on Shabbos. As Avi said, it's Malach B'Eina. You're not allowed to make cheese on Shabbos. But if a guy makes Shabbos, it makes the cheese, and a yid looks at the guy and he doesn't say anything, but he just sees the guy, he just stands and he sees the guy put it in. There's no problem of a Maryland offering. And he's allowed to buy that cheese off the guy because he's seen him do it, and on Shabbos, there's no issue there. So that's the Aguda. Now the Aguda ends up, it says, but we're going to find out it's fine. So that's the Aguda. So now the Shach disagrees with all this. And he's saying is that the Aguda is only talking about Mitzad Isur Shabbos. That has nothing to do with Amir L'Nochi, but when it comes to Gvinas Achim, it's still a problem. And he has a whole explanation how it goes back and forth on that one. So according to the Shach, what a yid has to do, similar to like Pasisol and Bishusol, where the yid has to actually be part of the baking, similar to the yid actually had to be part of making the cheese. So the yid actually has to put the rennet inside the milk.
Not just to look.
Not just to look, he has to put it in. And nowadays, obviously, because he has to be part of it.
If the idea is to make sure it's kosher
Right,
ingredients,
simply making sure it's ingredients.
Yeah. It's like, so Mitzvah making sure it's ingredients, you're fine. It's obviously fine there. But according to the Shach, similar to, so he basically from the Lashon of the Mishnah, the Lashon of, he's basically saying is that you have to, it's not enough, similar to by Pas Yisrael. Pas Yisrael can look the same thing. I can look at look at the guy who uses kosher ingredients, puts it in too. But the Chachamim wanted the yid to actually be part of it. So similar to why? He doesn't go into the reason why he wanted that. He basically just says that
for this emphasis, Lama.
Okay, so
because maybe they were conscious to just do. You want to look good enough and then you can cheat.
The Pas Yisrael and Bishul Yisrael is not really for kashrus reasons. It's more for there was Isser Chassid. They didn't want people socializing with going too much. So here it's more to do with kashrus, but he compares it. He says it's more part of the same thing. He kind of made it the same general thing. Why? It doesn't really go why that's applicable. He doesn't go into that reason, but it's the same idea. So he basically looks at from the Lashon of the Gemara, how it says there, basically it says by the milk, it says Roya. You saw Roya by Esachaliva, but it doesn't use the Lashon of Roya by using the cheese. So he wants to say, because it doesn't say Roya, it means that he has to actually do it himself. But either way, so now, La Halacha, we're passing like that along, but they have to look. Now, kashrus agencies, you obviously want to go according to all shittas. And what's the big deal if the guy puts it in or he's, put it out it in.
Big deal is the company may say you don't want to touch it.
Right. So whatever. Companies are fine. So The guy measures it out. Yeah, he measures it out. He gives it to him. The guy pours it in. Okay, fine. That's it. Similar to or if it's a Renin tank, similar to it. So instead of the guy push the button, the Yid pushes the button. So it's not the end of the world. Anyways, that's the shit of the shop. We're going to now flip over.
The way the vinegar all has to have a structure on it also, right?
Yeah.
So that you guess our structure beforehand, like you have to source all.
So you have to source from a kosher place, yeah. So they'll source it from a kosher place, and they'll come. There's a few big companies that make it, certified by you, okay, a few of those, and then they'll bring it in, and then so the renter already comes in kosher. And
He's pressing the button.
he's pressing the button. So he's there. Yeah. So he has to press the button.
Then you like to the color. You also doing it, and you observe it again, and that's nice.
Wine is a little different. One day we'll go into the wine industry. That's well. There's. Is my time up or? How many? It's okay. Okay, so let's. Okay, so let's do here. So let's.
I'm not joking. I think I'm joking.
No. So let's do. Okay, so one. Okay, just because we're short on time, I want to end with the outro. Just because we're short on time.
Now you're the manager.
But before I end with the Alter Rebbe, I'm gonna say so the Noida Yehuda writes that now in halacha usually when there's a machlekes to the shach and amor, we usually follow the shach. Now, however, the Noida Yehuda and a few others as well, they say here, however, we don't follow the shach. The meaning is to follow the amor. It's not common, but the meaning is to follow the amor. And he brings his reasons why. The Noida Yehuda goes even to it, how saying that the Mordechai, which they learned that you have to actually do, as he says a Khalifa, they misquoted the Mordechai. He goes in. It's a very lovely tshuva, anyone who has time for it. Now, the last little sticker, which I have here as well, and I want to read through, but we're short on time, is that he gives.
I did that. You could do it.
And fine, we'll read the last little thing of the Noida Yehuda, then we're going to the Alter Rebbe. So, the Noida Yehuda, it's got on top Noida Yehuda, it's got 21 over here. Noida Yehuda looks like this.
21. Let me see. Oh, okay.
Okay, Noida Yehuda. Now, where we're going here is the third paragraph. You have Noida Yehuda?
Third paragraph. The third paragraph.
The third paragraph, and it says began.
Began.
Okay. So now beforehand, he brings down, so the Noida Yehuda says the only one who asks it really that you have to put something in is the Maran from Rottenberg. But then he goes and he says another way out according to the Maran from Rottenberg, it could be okay. And he goes, the Gam Bezenel and Daiti, the Gam Dibre Maran, in Daf Kisham, Kishigam Hakeva Ichonokri. We're talking about where the stomach, i.e., the renner belongs to the good. Shanochli Nothing Ego Shalei Lishka, Velokach Hakev Misham, Oy Shanochli Kona Keva Ksheder Mitach Yisrael. Velokach Vehimi Bicholov Shalei Bifnei Yisrael. So we're talking here where the renner belongs to the good. He took his stomach and he put it in, and the cable belonged to the goat. Avo, I'm not 100% sure what shvogin means, but I think it means like shepherds or something like that. So these people usually don't have their own cave themselves. And they bring their own cave, they bring their own rennet, and they add their own rennet in, right? Even if the rennet, since the rennet belongs to Yid, even if the goy adds it to the milk, Yisrael has a part in the cheese by the rennet belonging to him. So the Maran from Rottenberg, who says that the Yid has to have participation, if the rennet belongs to the Yid, there's going to be participation as well. So if the Yid owns the cable, which is rennet, right? What's the cable? The cable is So the Yid owns the rennet, and he adds it in. Sorry, and the guy adds it in, but if the cave, if the renner belongs to the Yid, that's enough participation. So now, obviously, let's end up with the Alter Rebbe. And that heter from the Noda B'Yehuda is something that we use, and especially comes to use making cheese on Shabbos. The Hatchila will use it. Yeah. It's even like Hatchila, right? According to Maram, that's according to Noda B'Yehuda, it's like Hatchila. Now, let's go to the Alter Rebbe. Man, exactly. So now, so just to end off, how do we make cheese on Shabbos? There are companies that make cheese on Shabbos. For example, I'll give you one. Cheez-Its. Cheez-Its are not Chol Yisrael. So 1 second. So Cheez-Its are not Chol Yisrael, but they are, so it's Chol Stam, but the cheese that goes onto Cheez-Its is Gvinas Yisrael. And it's done there's a facility in Idaho where they do it there, and they are working 24/7, and they have a mashgiach there 24/7. Mashgiach has his own little room, everything. So they usually bring Bochum over for the Yom type. But it's a different story. There's ways to do it. Well, don't worry, there's a heter for everything, Mandy. There's a heter for everything. There's a heter for everything. But that's a different day. Huh?
Because
the milk itself, there's no hashgacha by the milk. Why not? Because practically speaking, to have a mashgiach by the milking is a lot more expensive. It's one
that this company is doing. They're one of the biggest snack makers.
Yeah, you're gonna bring now the company with the truck, the Chol Israel.
So Cheez-Its is owned by Kellogg's, right? Cheez-Its is owned by Kellogg's, and they make so now for Cheez-Its, for Kellogg's, they want a kosher. They don't.
Stories about without numbers. It's not right.
What do you mean?
Numbers, cost, how much it costs.
Oh, that okay. That we don't have all the details either. Wow. Anyway, Cheez-Its is owned by Kellogg's. They're not interested in paying extra for mashgiach and bringing the milk. If I can get extra Chol Stam back, the Gvinas Yisrael, fine, we'll do it that way. So what they do is they have mashgiach there 24/7, and he's in his room, and every 40 minutes he has to put the rennet in. So you're not getting much sleep, So every 40 minutes he has to put the rennet in, and he has a button in his room, and there's a little light that goes on that tells him, "Oh, it's time for the rennet." Presses it, goes in. Every 40 minutes, he knows he has to go in. So on Shabbos, what does he do on Shabbos? On Shabbos, he's not allowed to put the rennet in because of Malach Albayna. So what does he do on Shabbos? So he has to see. So what he does is that we follow the shit of the Ramon, and we do with Tziruf, we do the shit of the Noda B'Yehuda way. So first of all, the company, so the hashgacha will purchase. Well, at least the OK. What he's done is the OK purchases the rennet. And also he'll make a kinyan, right? Similar like you do a kinyan, you pick it up by the first comment, You're right. So you pick up. So what does he do there? He has a pallet. You got a big pallet. So what does he do? So he goes into the forklift, presses the button, he lifts it up, lifts it down. Now he's made a kinyan, right? So it belongs to the mashgiach and it belongs to the pashas agency. That's how they do it. So now the cave or the renner belongs to the yid. That's according to the shit of Noda B'Yehuda. And additionally, now we can also follow the Ramon, where he just watches it, right? So he sees them. So what will happen is on Shabbos, when they come in, the Yid just watches them.
He's gonna come home now. He's gonna eat the cheese.
So he'll push it in. So now, just to end with the Alter Rebbe, so obviously the Alter Rebbe and Yeridel we don't have, unfortunately, but we do have the Alter Rebbe for Shabbos, right? And according to the Alter Rebbe for Shabbos, we obviously know how he holds. So in Lamed Ches, Sif Lamed Ches, the Alter Rebbe says, "Nochim oisim gvinas v'Shabbos micholo shelehem." So now, goyim that make cheese from their milk has to be the milk has to belong to the goy, can't belong to the yid over here. Vayisor royes hachalibu v'agibon. So the yid sees the milking and he sees how the cheese being made. In order for it to be mutter for Yisrael to eat, so we see already here follows the Amal, but he has to see it. But you can buy it afterwards, after Shabbos to eat. After me, so even if the Yisrael is hanging out by the herd, by the flock for so long, and he knows that the cheese he's going to buy the cheese at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And the Nochi has intention to sell it to the Yid. But still, he says Bahai is a mutter. Shemikol Mokum Anochi Oisel Tevis Atzmi, because he's not really he's doing it.
So they can make
The
money.
guy is doing it for himself. Now again, this is talking about these halachas here down to talking about Merlin Nocher. So the guy is doing it for himself. He wants to make money. The Ein Issa Klal Mashi so Oimid over Malachta b'Shabbos. There's no issue by the Yid looking over on Shabbos and seeing what he's doing. Okay, but from that's not more Issa. Now Shadain Ein Shem so Nikakala Gvinis, because the cheese exactly is not considered the cheese, the Yid's cheese. Achik no Issa Mimeno Achar Shabbos. Only when he buys it after Shabbos. Or Lefichach Mutter Loima Lo Shiasa Filu b'Shabbos Shemutter Loima Nochi Yasa Malachta. After the Gem is Zerach Yisok Mitzvah Balail. So even you can even tell him to make it on Shabbos. But because again, if he's just watching him do it, it's fine. So we see the Alter Rebbe shit they follow like the Ramon.
Wait.
So the Alter Rebbe shit they follow like the Ramon. But all you have to do is that you have to look at the guy and make the cheese. According to the Shach, it's a little interesting because when the Shach talks about it, he says that the way to do it also is that way the cheese could belong to the Yid. Now obviously we'll go against the Alter Rebbe because the Alter Rebbe says the cheese can't belong to the Yid. Right. So the Alter Rebbe says that the cheese has to belong to the guy. And you can follow the Shita Ramah where you just look at it. You just look at it, you see him doing it. That already makes it Gvinas Yisrael at that point. Talking about Shabbos. So because it's easier to follow all shittas because it's easy to true.
But you could have satisfied everybody.
I was basically done. I skipped a bunch of stuff that we did, like you said already.
Very interesting.
Yeah, no worries.
It's a nice shield. That's what I say. But I have one problem with the Venus Israel that the not Israel. The companies look the same thing. So I work home with my kids. There's something called Stark or something like that. And it's red, it's exactly like.
I made the same mistake. I was in Chicago. I grabbed cheese sticks, the black cheese sticks, and exactly.
It's called Stark cheese.
Yeah.
It's from everything's from, and it has Hebrew on it. No, but it says like Venus Israel.
Yeah.
And when you make it small, low Chav Israel.
So yeah, very annoying. Very
So
annoying.
how could they allow that? I mean,
So
technically, Asian cheese.
technically speaking, you look the Color Yisrael brand and the Color Vacuum brand. They have different. At least they have different names. Olam, you have Miller's cheese, World cheese. There'll be different names. They'll have it. With the natural and kosher, it'll usually have has some real French left and whatever it is. But the problem is that the packaging looks very similar.
Right.
And so when you're running, so I was on a run to the airport and I grabbed the wrong bag. And I get to the airport about to open cheese sticks and all of a sudden I realized I got the wrong one. But when you put them side by side, or when you pick it up, you know. I mean, I would just grab and rent.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, but when you look at the package.